so much, guys, for coming back for yet another conversation that we're going to have. We are so excited that you could join us. We're in for an absolute treat as we're going to be sitting down with Alex and Amy today as they just share their testimony of who Jesus is in their lives and also just a little bit about their lives and their journey. So, guys, thanks so much for doing this.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Really appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having us, guys.
Thank you. We're excited. We do like to start off with the most difficult question. Honey.
Okay, so in your guys' opinion, this says a lot about who you are, too.
Pretty much
Just
says
so you know,
everything.
It sets the whole stage. Who do you think plays the best Batman?
The only one that I know is Michael Keaton.
My man.
Okay, guys, so I've never watched a Batman movie, but you know the Batman I do know
Two.
is the voice, Will Arnett, of the Lego Batman, and I love him.
Oh, amen.
So we're going to Lego Batman.
Batman.
That's great. All right.
Nice.
We've never had anybody say Lego Batman before.
No,
I think
he's
you
a
win.
first.
I think you win.
He's very broody.
Yeah, he is. That's a
Broody?
deep cut. He is.
Yeah, I guess Lego Broody.
Yeah. We've watched a lot of Lego Batman. That's a good pick.
There you go.
Well done.
Mine's Christian Bale.
Yes.
Good choice.
If you've never seen that one, you should watch it. It's pretty good.
We'll have to check it out.
Mine's
Yes.
Michael Keaton as well, though. I think he was the best.
Yeah.
I love Michael Keaton.
That's just the first one that I remember
Yeah?
growing up. It's,
Oh, yeah. That was the biggest movie ever when it came out. I remember that. I remember going opening weekend being like, thinking I was super cool. You know? One of those guys. So.
Did you wait in line for it?
My friend's dad took us. And I think he did wait in line because the mom brought us to the theater when he got the tickets. So it was Studio 28. Do you remember Studio 28?
Yep.
Yeah. So exciting. So exciting.
I don't think I've ever stood in line to watch a movie.
You're kidding. Just not committed to the game, babe.
No, I'm not. I am not committed.
Well, that's brilliant. Guys, thanks so much for doing this. And really, we'd love to hear about your story, your journey, your salvation story, then your journey as Christians. I guess we should just kind of start, tell us about your salvation, your childhood growing up, what led to it. Just kind of start there.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start. I grew up in the church in a Christian family. I was my entire life went to Christian school, went to Christian high school, and then attended Calvin. So kind of, my entire span I've been known that I was saved and growing in faith. And I made public profession of faith when I was 2008, so a little bit later in life, after we had gotten married, but so I've just really grown up my entire childhood and everything in the church and had really strong support and
that's amazing.
network there. So
were your parents, heavily involved in church, or what was?
They weren't involved in it, but they attended. I mean, they were. They got married and stayed in the church the whole time that we were all together,
amazing.
and my family all went through it. I've got 4 siblings, and
Wow.
Are you youngest, oldest, middle?
second youngest.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Tail end.
Tail end, right?
Yep,
I like that. So you went to Christian school your whole journey then?
My whole journey. Yep.
Man, so you never did anything wrong your whole life.
You know how it is.
Yes, I do. That's awesome. So in 2008, that was when you decided I want to be Lord of my life. So how old were you then?
I was 25.
25.
Yep.
Wow.
What age did you guys get married? You said you were married.
2007.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you got married?
24.
Yes.
Wow.
I could do math super quick.
Super fast.
Wow, look at you, homeschool, killing the game.
That's right. Don't knock homeschool.
No, never. That's impressive. Wow, so you grow up and I would imagine you're surrounded by kids that are saved and what made you decide okay, now's the moment I want to walk different?
So we had actually started attending a church shortly before we got married.
Sure.
It was a church plant in Holland that we were going to, and we were expecting our first child, and we were going to have him baptized, and part of that whole process was doing profession of faith as the parents. And
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, that's a great story, man. So 28. So, wow, that's 2008.
2008.
That's impressive. All through school. That's cool. And then how about for you?
Well, mine was a little different. My family, we kind of we knew of God. We all believed in God.
Sure.
But we weren't actively going to church all the time. Sometimes we were, sometimes we weren't.
Sure,
Right.
sure.
My parents divorced when I was 3.
Oh, wow.
And so I was mainly with my mom, and then on the weekends I would go to my dad's house.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we wanted to be part of a program like Vacation Bible School or Awana, my mom would always make sure to drop us off, pick us up, that whole
cool.
thing.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was really young, I want to say like maybe kindergarten age, and we were like at Vacation Bible School. It was the first day, and they were up on the stage, and they're like, if anybody wants to come to the front of the stage and ask Jesus to live in your heart, this is the time. And I was like, as a little girl, I pictured this cute little dollhouse like in my heart. And I was like, I want him to live in there.
Oh, that's
and so
great.
I just marched myself right on up there with the other few kids there. And what I didn't understand is they did this every day, and every day I was like, I'm gonna go back up there every day. So yeah, so that's kind of what started it. And I was part of a program called Awana.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like once a week, and you go and there's like Bible memory and a message and game time, which was the best.
Come on, that's
Yes.
So yeah, I did that. But what was kind of different is when that ended at 6th grade, I didn't really have anything to then plug into. And one weekend I was riding my bike around at my dad's house, and I passed by this group of kids my age, and they were in like a park behind a church, and they were like, "Hey, come on over here." And turned out that was a youth group. So then I started kind of getting plugged into that. So I felt like really, although I didn't have like a certain structure in my family unit, that I still like, God kind of came into my life and was like, hey, come on.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And so we went to, at that point I started doing like concerts and youth conferences and things like that. And then I would say like after high school then, like I really kind of stepped away from it all.
Sure. Yeah.
For no particular reason. It just wasn't available to me really anymore. So we met when I was at college. I was at Grand Valley, and he worked at a local Circuit City in Holland.
Circuit City. Come on.
Oh, crazy is that?
Yeah. I bet anybody younger than 30 doesn't know.
Yeah, they have no idea.
But it was the best.
It was way better
It
than Best Buy.
Yeah.
Way better.
Oh yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so we met there, and we were friends for 3 years, but I always knew I would never. He never, worked on Sundays. He was,
Sure.
We just got to. I knew he was kind of a man of faith, and I was actually I was in a relationship. So when I became single, a whole 2 days.
Hey! What's up, man? Good work.
He was like, "Hey, so and so is having a thing. You want to go?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure." Had no clue.
Sure.
Had no clue. But yeah, it wasn't long until we started looking at, okay, where do we want to start going as a church together?
Right.
Yeah.
But there was definitely a difference. Mine, I never, church and faith, it was always on my terms. There was
Sure.
never a structure.
Yeah.
And to him, it was very structured, and it was something you always did, and it was very prominent.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of hard conversations when we first started dating.
Yeah.
How did you navigate that? Because we were similar, but I know how we navigated it, and not
wasn't
very
well.
So,
I think a lot of it was just, like she said, we had a lot of conversations regarding it, and ultimately what we decided to do was to step away from the church that I had grown up in, and that was when we started attending the church plant that we were at.
Sure.
To kind of give us the opportunity to both grow together,
Yeah,
and have kind of a fresh start somewhere where it didn't feel like, I had kind of a advantage, so to speak,
Sure.
of all the relationships and everything that we had there. So
Interesting. It was funny. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I felt like felt very insecure because here he went to church his whole life.
right.
Sure.
And I just was spotty and in and out.
Yeah.
So,
No, I get that. It's interesting because when I wasn't a Christian. I grew up in a Christian home. She did, and we had very different understandings of God. Unfortunately, I didn't really believe. I had no understanding. And then when I got saved I think I was 31. I knew the day I got saved that this is where I was supposed to be the rest of my life. It was super easy. And Amanda was freaking out, man. It was so different than anything she expected. And it probably, for me, it was just this, but it took her a few weeks to really be like, okay, like this is. And so I remember having those conversations, and just like, no, like, listen, this is, like, I just knew this is where God put me, and this is it. And that means it's where to put you. And Austin was the same way. He thought, I'm going to be here forever. Like, he just in him really quickly.
Yeah.
And it's always been interesting because I've always wondered how, our story is unique to everybody else's, but how do other couples like kind of navigate this world of, you go to the church your whole life and then you show up one day and everybody's like,
Yeah. Yes.
And so how was that for because I would assume your family went to that church as well? Mm-hmm. How was that for them? You guys just kind of walking away and going somewhere else?
I think they, for the most part, were pretty understanding about it.
Good.
They realized kind of the reasoning behind it, the approach that we were going with.
Yeah.
So I think overall it was pretty well received.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of talking about it. I mean, it was definitely wasn't something that anybody took lightly.
Yeah.
And they needed to know that we were still pursuing God.
Yes, that's a big one.
I think
right?
that was where their hearts were at, and so we needed to make sure that we weren't just walking away to go find something, but we had something.
Right.
We
Correct.
had a destination already in
That's
mind.
brilliant.
Yeah.
That's good parenting.
Yeah.
Got good parents. That's amazing. That's really good. No, that's impressive. I think that's really the key. If God's moving you to something, awesome.
Yeah.
Right, and that's really good. No, it's good.
In the church plant, we were there for 3 years. We had our first son, Aiden, there, and it was just awesome to be a part of a community together. It was our first time all, learning how to be a family in church versus different as singles before.
Yeah,
it is.
Right.
It's a lot different.
Different, huh?
So we were going through that, and we were expecting our second child, Ella, and we at the same time we were starting to feel a little kind of stirring in our hearts a little bit more, starting to feel kind of a little more hungry for more. What's next?
Yeah.
And now that we kind of got this base under us, where do we want to go from here?
Yeah.
And at that point, we was 39 and a half weeks.
Yeah.
The very, very end of the pregnancy, and we lost her. She was stillborn full term.
Oh man.
So,
I did not know that.
yeah, it was very unexpected. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and we went in for a final appointment, and I had left him in the car with our 17-month-old.
Oh.
And I said, it's just going to be real quick. It was 3 days until the planned C-section.
Yeah.
And, I went in there, and, me and my doctor were just joking and laughing. And she said, I can't get a good Doppler reading. Let's go into the ultrasound room. And I still had no idea. I was happy as a clam. I was so excited to be done in 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you hear those terrible words of, I'm sorry. And there's no heartbeat.
Gosh.
So, and then I'm in there alone in this room, and they have to go get him and our son out of the car.
No way.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't really know, and then we hear Aiden kind of screaming because the nurses are taking him. So Alex can come sit next to me. And the doctor took her time, and she kind of went over everything on the ultrasound room, in the ultrasound room with us. And you just kind of go into shock.
Yeah.
I felt like I should be crying, but I can't cry right now, and I didn't. It was like a big blur of a moment, and then everything happened so fast after that. We were at home, got a bag, and went to the hospital that night. And I'm also 1 out of 5 siblings, and he's 1 out of 5, so we had our families jam-packed in this little waiting room.
Oh.
And we delivered her the next morning, and she was 8 pounds, 4 ounces, this beautiful little baby girl.
Yeah.
Full head of hair, and she's so sweet.
Yeah.
Well, and so how long had you been married?
That was in 2010, so we were
2.5 years.
Yeah, 2.5 years.
Wow. Well, that's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough.
She was, one thing about a child when you lose a child is like you plan everything. So I had clothes for her up until 2T. And so we had the difference of when we've talked about grief these last few years is when you're grieving the loss of a child, you're grieving your future.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not just somebody with a past memory, but you've already planned so much. You've thought about the day that she would get married and you'd give her away, thought about her days on the soccer field and whatever it may be. You have all these things pictured and envisioned for them. And so after we just kind of stumbled through those first couple weeks, I think the hardest part was when everybody started going back to work.
Right.
And the world your world is still stopped.
Yeah.
But the rest of the world just keeps going.
Keeps going. Mm-hmm.
And you kind of feel stuck in that moment.
Yeah.
How did it's obviously as a pastor I've encountered this with people before and tried to walk them through it. It's a very hard thing to walk someone through. It's very difficult. It's one of the leading causes of divorce in America. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. And I also think very often, especially guys who've never gone through it, they have no comprehension of what it actually does inside of your marriage, inside of the guy. Like guys don't get it.
Yeah.
It's such a hard thing to navigate. And I'd love to hear just how did you? I mean, you've only been married 2.5 years. I mean, like, listen, if there's not a statistic in the world that would say you guys would make it through that.
Right.
Right. And so, and obviously we know God is, He's the center of everything. I get all of that. Please, I understand it. But how did you navigate what for most people is something that sometimes causes them to lose faith?
Yeah.
It sometimes causes them to. It's part of the reason as Christians, I think we have to have this understanding that we all will question things at times. Grief and heartache, it's part of the process. But how did you navigate all of that with, your wife, you have a young kid, and like how did you guys navigate that in that season?
I think the biggest thing that helped us was, we really taking a moment and just realizing that, Christ is the center of everything that is our marriage and, our life and how we're raising our son. And I think I felt more of a pull into the scripture, into, leaning into him than at any other point when we were going through that. I remember sitting in the hospital room, and that was like, I had, like I said, grown up in the church, but I really never listened to Christian music on the radio.
Sure.
We sang psalms and stuff at church, but that was like sitting in the room that night, I started searching for it, and I found, what was it song? Addison Road.
I Hope Now.
Yeah, Hope Now is the name of the song. It had come out like within the last month, and it was like a pillar for us during that time. So
I think one of the biggest things with the loss of a child is, you hear the word like heartache gets tossed around, or that's a trial, or trial. Yeah, and it's not just a heartache. Your whole life, it's like shattered.
Yeah.
You're not the same as you were before.
100%.
When you have to bury one of your children, it's shattering.
Absolutely.
And so you try to put pieces together, but it's never going to go back the way it was before.
Right.
And I think so we had to realize that we can't go and do life the way we were doing before.
Yeah.
And we were so dependent on God's word. And I remember I would say almost even over a year, I couldn't fall asleep unless he was reading a devotion or scripture to me, because I just needed to hear it to calm down before bed. And he, whether it was music or reading scripture or whatever it was, we just knew that we needed to be able to lean on each other, but we needed to depend on God.
yeah.
And I think that was a difference for us. There were definitely times that I was down and he was up, and vice versa. And I would say, like, there were fights because of it, because it was like, well, why don't you understand where I'm at right now?
Oh,
Yeah.
And then it got to the point where like, this isn't
Right.
this is not helpful.
Right.
So,
not
like,
healthy.
no, so why don't we we talk a lot about just communication. Like
Right.
you need to know that I'm not going to be helpful for you right now. I know you're down and I'm down, but like
Sure.
we are where we're at right now, and
Yeah.
just kind of communicating how we're feeling.
Yeah.
How, if you don't mind me asking, I mean, because you were so far along, right? And I mean, I've been there, we're to the end, and you're ready for it to be done, and then for this to happen. But then you have another child that you still have to take care of. How did you navigate that? Do you know what I mean? Like, still, because he's, how old? He's little. He doesn't
He was just under
understand,
18
right?
months.
Yeah.
So how do you navigate that? Like, grieving the loss, but still trying to be a mom at the same time.
I would say I had to just kind of choose my moments.
Yeah.
I like choose my moments, and he still is to this point. He's 12 now, but he's super compassionate, and so when we go and put her wreath out at the cemetery, like we'll see tears in his eyes, and I think he knew like we didn't want to cry in front of him too much.
Right.
But there were times that he came up, and I would just say, I really miss Ella. I really miss your sister. And there were sweet moments too. All of our kids now do it because we'll say like, you know, where is Ella? And so we had to talk a lot about heaven, a lot about like, well, why is she there? And he would talk about in his little 2-year-old voice, like, well, I'm going to take a helicopter up to heaven. And then you're breaking down on the inside, but also, that's cool, dude. And, but we have this thing where well, I don't understand. Is she up in the sky? And the sun was setting one day, and we're like, yeah. And he's like, well, she painted the sky. So now to this day, when they see the sunset, like, oh, Ella, she's painting the sky.
Beautiful.
So I would say just like choosing your moments and just knowing what I was capable of. But I will definitely admit to projecting my grief away.
Oh, sure.
Oh, I definitely did a ton of freezer meals.
Yeah, that was a big one.
He had to go buy like a stand-up freezer because I made like 80 freezer meals in 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
I was like, and you don't know when you're doing it. And all of a
of
sudden I
course,
had this love of baking, and I made like, I don't know, every person in
Everything
church
you
like
could.
eight cakes each. I don't know. I was definitely projecting away and just trying to keep really busy, and that was just my mode of dealing with the grief that I was going through. You got into yard work a lot.
Yep, spent a lot of hours mowing.
Wow.
Really?
Lots and lots of hours.
Yeah, we were running a small house that was on like 3 acres, and so he just.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I would mow the whole thing.
Yeah.
Didn't
Yeah.
need to, but I would. Yeah.
So
Man.
yeah, you definitely find your channels of it.
Yeah.
And we actually went back to the church that he was a part of before, and we were there for 8 years. They're very, very knowledgeable. They know the scripture very well, and we were so hungry for God's word.
Yeah.
We definitely dove into that.
Yeah, of course.
And one thing I struggled with for, I would say, like 4 years is I wanted to be like the perfect Christian. I wanted to be the perfect wife. I wanted to be the perfect everything, because maybe if I had all my ducks in a row, something like this wouldn't happen again. And we had our son, our second son, third child, and he came, Abel, and he came in like this bright ray of sunshine. Like the hospital room was legit like shining and beaming, and everybody was celebrating, and you know, everybody's on eggshells that whole time.
Can I ask you about that? Like, you go through this experience as, I mean, it's shattering. It's life changing in a lot of ways. It destroys so much. Especially even for people who love God, sometimes it's one of those things that can really end everything. You know. So you go through this, and then now, like, how long after that before you got pregnant again?
9 months later.
Wow.
And I think this is the other thing that I think most people don't really think about. I think, you know, that I would imagine that was probably one of the most terrifying experiences of your life.
I couldn't imagine.
You know, it's not only you're so excited and happy, but you're going to spend the next 9 months
Yeah.
Scared.
Yeah, it was definitely a roller coaster of emotions. And our doctor, she was so sweet. She gave us like her personal cell phone. And there were times that I just needed to go in just to go in. And I was plugged in with a few women who also kind of shared my journey a little bit. And so we kind of had this every 2 or 3 months we met up, and that helped.
Yeah.
And there was just a lot of times that we had to talk about what we know. And one of the things that we really grew on is just trusting God. We have to trust God. We don't know why his plan is the way it is, but there's certain things that we can't control. And that was a situation that we couldn't do anything about. And that helplessness, that was one of the biggest things to get over, was how helpless we felt. And especially me as a woman, it all happened inside me. And I had
No idea.
I had no idea, and I had no part of it, and I couldn't do anything about it. So that was probably one of the biggest things. And then after having Abel and going through this rocky pregnancy, it was just like the four of us. We just really enjoyed that time. We really, really put roots down in our church, and then we expected our fourth child, Allie, 4 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we experienced another heartache. We lost her at halfway through our pregnancy. So Allie Ray, she was just before our 20-week mark. And so we went through a lot at that time because we had thought, God, we're here. We're doing all of this. And not that we thought we earned it, but we thought we learned everything that we needed to. We thought we grew where we were supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it was just devastating. Man. She was the size of my hand. She was just a little thing. And we have her footprints. And so then the question was, we had this big funeral for Ella. And, you get asked these questions at this in-between time.
Right.
Now she's considered, because she didn't make it over the 20-week mark, she's considered a miscarriage and not a stillbirth. Yes. So how do you navigate this conversation, because she's still our daughter?
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's this awkwardness then with moms at this point.
Right.
Because you don't know what to do.
Right.
And so we had this good friend, and he ran the funeral home, and he kind of helped us navigate, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And he said one of the things that we could do is do a visitation, because what's going to happen if you don't allow people to come to you and give you their condolences, in 2 months you're going to see them at the grocery store.
100%. Yeah.
4 months you're going to run into them here,
that's
and you're
such
going to be
good
living
advice.
it over and over again.
Such good advice.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we went with that and had a visitation, and then we just did a small gravesite for
So
her.
Ella and Allie are buried diagonally right from each other.
Yep.
And so now we go, and so now they say Ella and Allie paint the skies. And the boys, Aiden and Abel, they just grew up with your sisters, your sisters in heaven. And so it was, we were just, I would say that was when we learned, after Ella, we learned a lot about faith and trust.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until after Allie that we learned a lot about surrender. And there's a difference. And sometimes people don't understand that there's a difference between trusting and surrendering.
Yeah.
But we were at this point in our life that we couldn't do anything but surrender to him.
Yeah.
So we were kind of surprised 2 months later. It's like a miracle. We were pregnant with our fifth child, Annabelle. And all of a sudden, it was this roller coaster.
Yeah.
I was a hot mess. I'll just be
I
honest. I was a hot mess.
I bet. How long had you been married at this point?
That was in 2014, so 7 years.
Yeah.
Fourth child, 7 years.
Yeah.
And so I was pregnant with Annabelle 6 weeks in. And in the middle of the night, I ran to the bathroom. Alex chases after me. And we thought we were miscarrying. So we called my doctor on her personal cell phone, and Alex is just crying on the phone with the doctor, telling her all about my symptoms. And she said, I'm really sorry, guys. How did she?
She said it sounded like a textbook miscarriage. So that was it. 6 weeks.
Yeah, just over 6 weeks. And I was like, we were not planning on getting pregnant. I didn't understand why we were going through this. So at that point, I would say with Ella and Allie, I didn't experience a lot of anger. There were moments I questioned, obviously, but I didn't experience anger. I was really angry.
Yeah, of course.
And I didn't know what to do with that because I don't get, that's not a very natural emotion for me.
Right, yes.
And then three days later, they said, we need to come in and get lab work and get all that stuff taken care of. So we did, and they called us back the next day. And I remember, when you're pregnant, you're not supposed to, have any pop or hot dog, lunch meat. And I was at like Sam's Club eating. I know, right?
I ate raw.
That so explains Austin.
But I was breaking every rule possible. I was like eating, Nathan's hot dog and just kind of just mad at the world. And they said, you need to come in for an ultrasound. And I was like, oh, great, what now? What now? And I didn't, that was new for me. So I was not in the best place. And
put it off until way at the end of the day before you called him back.
Yeah, so we called him back, went into the ultrasound the next day, and 45 minutes later, I'm thinking worst case scenario. I'm like, what is happening? And the ultrasound technician is just tears rolling down her cheeks. She said, I see a baby with a heartbeat.
That's amazing.
And that's our little Annabelle, and now she's 5 years old and spunky little thing running around.
I will say I knew that. I knew that. So as you were telling that story, I'm like, I wanted to tell Mandy, don't worry, it works out.
I know.
Like, hey, listen, this one's a good one. But
and what's crazy is when we called our doctor she said, Amy, I am at the edge of the Grand Canyon. She was on vacation. She's like, praise God. She's like, God is so good. God is such a good God of miracles. So.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm glad.
Yeah.
I
Man.
didn't know that.
That is so just as a husband, as a dad. I mean, listen, we're guys. So let's just be real.
Yeah.
There's times Mandy's upset. I don't know what to do. I just look at her. Lord, tell me what to say. You know?
Right.
You know. But
Let's be honest. Sometimes I'm upset and I don't know what to do.
Right. Yeah. And I think how do man. That's a lot in 7 years.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot to go through. It's a lot to navigate. How did you keep the family together and strong?
I think the biggest thing that helped us was learning to depend on each other, but also to depend on our community that we were in.
Yeah.
A big issue for a lot of guys is no accepting and learning to ask for help. And, when you're going through something like that, nobody knows what to do.
Yeah.
So take any advice or any help or anything like that that's out there. If you have a community of a church that you're in and they're wanting to help, don't try to be strong and do it on your own. You need the help.
That's brilliant.
So our church was family. They were
very much so.
They were there for us, and they didn't really miss a beat. And so when it came to a couple years later, we started feeling this kind of pull to what's next, God?
Yeah.
And I was digging my heels in. I was like, I'm not leaving. I'm not.
Listen, I get it. Yeah.
I am not
We've
leaving.
gone through a lot with that church.
Yeah, and it was, and then our friends, Taylor and Brittany Taylor was speaking at the Point in Holland.
Yeah.
And they said, do you want to come and, encourage us? I was like, oh yeah, we'll go. And then a few more invitations later, and we just felt this overwhelming spiritual pull was the best way. And there's just a few specific messages we got in the car afterwards, and we're like, well, that was definitely God, because that was right inside everything. And so it took a while to transition, just because when you walk through such a big thing, But we were definitely curious and eager to learn more about, what a spirit-led life would look like.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah. Oh, thank God for Brittany and Taylor. They're amazing. They are. Can't believe they moved to Florida, though.
I've been down there a few times.
Oh, good.
Giving us
good.
a couple trips.
Oh,
I mean,
good.
there
Gives you
you
a good
go.
reason to go.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
It's
I love
beautiful.
them. They're amazing. Man, that's, I mean, like, guys, I will be honest, right? I've been sitting here trying not to cry the whole time.
I know, we're falling apart.
I know, you
We're
guys are
like,
doing way better than we are.
Yes.
But I mean, watch, obviously I've been aware of you guys for, over a year, right? I've seen you around and I've watched you, and you guys have always seemed like, well, this is what I always say. You guys always seem really happy and full of hope in life, and you seem incredibly intelligent, right? Every time I'm preaching on a Sunday, I look down at you and think, he probably knows more about this than I do. Right? You look so focused and so wise, and listening to you guys tell this aspect of what you've gone through. I got to be honest. I'm absolutely. It gives me so much hope that you guys have a marriage that you do, right? And this understanding that even in the broken pieces and the trauma, that you can heal and be stronger, and you can heal and be together. And there's I think this is the other thing that I think I'd love to talk about a little bit is, I don't think most people realize how many couples deal with miscarriages and lost babies. They don't really, because so many people suffer in silence.
Yeah.
I've talked to people before that they're pregnant, and they tell me, and they say, but we're not going to announce it till X amount of weeks. And I understand. I understand that. I do understand when they're saying that. But then when I find out they've lost a baby before,
Yeah.
and we never knew, because they never announced it, because they had concern this could happen. And there's so many couples that try to navigate this on their own.
Yeah.
And kind of go into themselves, or they give themselves a very. I try to encourage people to actually grieve it for as long as it takes,
Yeah.
which I think for sometimes it might be forever.
Yeah.
Like it might be till you go home, and I think so often they want to get the grieving process over so quickly.
Yes.
And we've been very fortunate. We've never experienced that, ever. I've had people we love dearly that have, and I know that's not the same. I totally am aware of that. But I've seen people handle it well, and I've seen people handle it where it's taken longer to get better, right? And like, can you talk to me just about, like, I'm certain you've come alongside people that have gone through this same tragedy, and like, how do you help people? Like, what is it you guys do to kind of help bring people into the healthiest spot possible?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't long after we had Ella, and we realized, wow, there's a lot of community of people reach out to you, and they say, this and that. And one of the things that we actually struggled with is, and not a lot of people know about it until you lose somebody close to you, is there's this grief comparison. Oh yeah, well, they'll come up, we even had it through the visitation line. I lost my brother last spring. Or,
Not the same.
or like, and you're like, okay.
I shouldn't laugh. I apologize. It just kind of shocked me. I apologize.
Yeah, but this is something, in talking to other moms, this happens constantly.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, well, this happened to me, but within that, there was also people who reached out and were like, I lost my son, 10 years ago, 2 months ago, whatever it may be, and started sharing some stories, and we realized that our experience where we had Ella at was, we had nurses that prayed by our bedside. We had our whole hospital, like, staff, that when we delivered her, they all walked in our shoes.
Yeah,
So they were all
the
brave
entire
parents.
nursing team had all experienced loss themselves.
Oh my goodness.
Which is just so unique and amazing.
So unique.
And so we were absolutely, like, just felt, there's one thing that, like, grace changes everything.
Absolutely.
And we just felt God's grace tremendously after, and just a way that we could not even speak about after Ella. And we just quickly realized that our experience wasn't necessarily what everybody else was experiencing.
yes.
And like we got this beautiful care package at the hospital with amazing things for us to kind of remember, because you expect years with your children.
Right.
And we had moments. And so these things were super important to us. And so we started a nonprofit, the Ella Foundation, a year after having Ella. And we started reaching out to other families who have lost, a child through either infant loss, miscarriage, or stillbirth, and we send out care packages to people in the community or nationwide too.
Yep.
And
Wow.
so we started doing that, and so we get very sometimes random requests like, hey, like you don't expect little things like, hey, like I have to put together a slideshow, I have to prepare a funeral, and like I was in the hospital and you had to go and pick out flowers and a casket and things that you're never expected to do at 26 years old. And
Yeah.
so walking beside families that are like, what did you do for this?
Right.
Even like sometimes song, like people are
Yeah,
asking
we've
for
helped-
song
we've helped
referrals.
put together soundtracks and stuff for them. And
Wow.
Yeah, because how do you do that, if you don't mind me asking? Because, like, for a grandparent or something, you have all this history that you can go back on and speak about, and you can celebrate that life,
Yeah.
right? But in this, you're right, you are grieving their future. Like, how do you help? How do you navigate that with the parents? Like, do you just help them, or what do you do with that?
So with the care packages that we send out, we kind of mimic close to what we received, which is we'll usually do a stuffed animal and a blanket, and those tend to be the most important component because what you're missing is holding your child, so that gives you something physical that you can hold on to.
And there's been nights that we've been like, we
Yeah,
got this stuffed lamb for Ella, and I remember seeing this lamb. I'm like, why is this nurse giving me this lamb? Like, what is this about? I don't need this stuffed animal. And then here I am 2 days later, like clinging to the stuffed lamb, and you don't think about it.
Yep, and it comes out every year on her birthday still.
Every year?
Yep, in her blanket.
Oh.
So it's it's something that you'll care for, and you take care of it. So, and then we also supply books that have resources in there, and
Good.
a necklace that the moms can wear.
We forget-me-not seed packets, things like that, like
Yeah.
plants that we get a lot of questions from aunts, uncles, grandparents. What do I get my niece? What do I get my daughter who's going through this? And that's probably one of our popular requests, like what can I do to honor? And
Right.
and then one of the things that I would say parents struggle with the most is, I would say for a mom, is this world of you want your child to be recognized,
Yeah.
like they are part of our family.
Absolutely.
And often that isn't the way that society sees them.
Right.
But also you don't want to be the one to bring it up all the time.
yeah,
And so
absolutely.
it's this kind of this little dance of, and then there's hurt feelings.
Sure.
And so it's, we often talk to families just about communication is just so important, whether it's your sister that you're upset with or a friend that didn't
Sure.
stop by and you had this expectation of them. It's been a taboo for years.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. There was a woman who reached out to us, and she said 25 years ago she lost her son full term over in Europe. Do you remember her story? And she wasn't allowed to bring him home. She was never, and often, actually, even 20 years ago, often you didn't get to see even the choice to see your child, even full term.
Yeah.
And we have beautiful professional
photos,
pictures.
Yeah.
There's an organization, Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, and they come in and they take professional pictures and they give you the CD. But we got to hold Ella and love on her, and that was one of the things we grieved the most for Allie, because we didn't get to do that with her.
Yeah.
And so that's, as a parent, that's one of your things is, you naturally want to talk and you naturally want to celebrate your child. And when you can't, or you don't know if you can, and you don't want the sympathy, but you also want, it's this weird awkward dance that you do.
It makes so much sense.
So I think that's a big thing that we just honestly listen to parents and encourage other family members of, hey, what can I do?
Yeah.
And often it's, don't do a lot of talking.
Right.
Try not to compare too much. Don't throw, often less is more.
Yeah.
We tell people. Sometimes, one time I had a friend who just came and she asked if she could come over, and I just didn't respond because I didn't feel like talking for months.
Right.
He actually did my phone for the first 3 months.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do one phone call, and even text messages, and so I wouldn't respond. And she just came over and she folded my laundry while I just sat there. That was so great.
That's a good friend.
So I think sometimes just we listen to these family members and
just
parents.
be there, be available to them.
So good.
One of the programs we did start, though, a couple years ago, which we were hesitant to do, and after Allie, we just kind of were like, okay, God, yes, we're going to do this. There was a woman down in Texas who was turning wedding gowns into bereavement gowns.
Yeah.
Because we had Ella's, because I was crazy OCD and nesting. So I had her clothes up until like 2T, no joke.
Yeah.
And we had her baptism dress.
Yeah.
So we had something.
Yeah.
We didn't have to go out shopping for yet another thing that we weren't prepared for. But there's often is this idea of, okay, well, what do we bury
where
our
do we
child?
even get this
in?
from?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you don't even think. And so we started this program, and we have seamstresses who just donated dresses into these little suits and dresses, and then we donate them to local hospitals.
That's amazing.
And then around Christmas time, Christmas is hard, anniversaries are hard, birthdays are hard.
Yeah.
So we started like a Christmas care package where every year we send out an ornament in honor of their baby. And that's probably we get the most feedback about that program.
Yeah. Yeah, we get a lot of response back from the families that we've helped. That every year we are able to send something to them in honor of their child, and it just really touches them. So.
Good job, guys.
Well, if you think about it, in the holidays, you want your family to be together.
Yeah,
you know?
100%. Yeah.
And we just want to take that moment and pull them and face them to Jesus and say,
Yeah.
this is at the end of the day, you go through all of these things, but God never left us.
No.
Right. Yeah.
And he was right there with us, and he was able to really give us this peace that you can't even describe.
It's amazing.
And so we just want to be able to offer that to whoever is in need.
Oh, good job. Guys, you truly
Those
are
are
amazing.
amazing.
Truly amazing.
And so that's why there's definitely been times that I haven't been able to make it through the story.
Yeah.
But we've had to say it a few times. It doesn't get any easier.
No.
It doesn't
Couldn't
get any
imagine it does.
No, I mean, I by no case have gone through what you've done, but I mean, my son was sick. He's fine now, right?
Yeah.
But like, even thinking on that little thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
is by no means a comparison, but like, even when I think about that, I get a little choked up. To see the two of you navigate this in such a way is honestly truly amazing. And I think what you guys have now put into place, I think you guys are going to be an amazing resource
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
people. And honestly, people like us, that we have no clue. Like we wouldn't know what to do, but now like we can come to you and you can help us navigate. I think it's amazing of what you have done in such with such a tragic thing that happened.
The amount of people you'll be able to help
agree.
grieve it and get through it. It's powerful, right? It's amazing. I sit here thinking, I don't know if there's a better example I've ever experienced in my life of God works all things to the good, right?
Yes.
Definitely.
And I sit there and I think, thank God you guys were able to get. I want to be really I really want to say this. I don't know if you ever get through it, but you've been able to turn it into, a part of your journey, a part of your family, part of your story, a part of your legacy. And through what. Through what you guys are going to do, your daughter will outlive all of you, right? And I think that's the essential part of, operating in the kingdom mindset, in the kingdom spirit of, my brokenness. That's the hardest thing I've ever had to go through. is where Jesus will shine the most and where you can have the most impact. And watching you guys navigate this, I'm just blown away. I'm gonna be honest. It's very touching, and I can't I can't tell you how grateful I am that you guys are here to help others walk through it. Because no matter how much you love Jesus or how much you love people, experiencing something gives you knowledge and wisdom to help somebody else through it. And I know you guys are gonna touch a lot of people and change a lot of lives, and it's awesome. Proud of you. So glad you're just such a great example.
Yeah.
Right? And but man, I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing. How if someone wanted to give to your organization,
Yeah, that's what
how
I was
would they do
literally
that?
just going to say. How can people reach out and donate, give? How can they
I
do
mean, listen,
that?
the teddy bears ain't free.
Right.
Right?
Right.
The easiest way is right to our website.
What is that?
theellafoundation.org. There's also a link to our Facebook page to the website as
Yeah.
well, and there's a donate button right on the website.
Is that also the same place if somebody is struggling or if they need help, they
Yes.
can also go to that same place
Yep,
as well?
yep. Either through Facebook or through the website. There's a contact us button, and it'll send an email right to us.
Oh, it's brilliant.
So the ellafoundation.org.
Yes.
And most
Please
all
give.
the works that we do is through word of mouth. It's like, hey, my
amazing.
friend, my coworker, and we actually just this week we sent out 8 care packages.
Oh my goodness.
And it's just, so it does, you had asked earlier how often this happens. And when you say 1 in 4, it is really 1 in 4.
is,
And so often those families are trying to do it on their own.
Yeah.
And we know how to, I mean, even with the amazing care and comfort and grace that we receive from the Lord, it was still very, very difficult. And so there are people out there trying to do it
Yeah.
without God. And that's what, there are other organizations that do help families, but ours is faith-based. We believe that God is there for the brokenhearted.
Absolutely.
And when he says, you know, I've gone ahead, I've prepared a place for you. In my house, there's many mansions. Like, that's something we clung to. Like, we
Yeah.
know our girls where they are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, for sure.
that's what gives us comfort.
So good.
Guys, you are amazing.
You are.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I like telling your story and just giving people hope that may not have hope or, maybe struggling. And I just want to thank you guys for being able to talk about it and share it with people, even though it may be hard. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks for having us,
welcome.
guys.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Love you.